Today is September the 27th, 2021, and my name is Tanya Finchum, and along with me is Ben Pollard. I'm with the Oklahoma State University, and Ben is a retiree from the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. We're in Oklahoma City to speak with Phil Campbell, Oklahoma County Conservation District Director since 2016 and Area 2 Conservation Commissioner since 2017. This interview will be part of the Oklahoma's Conservation Heritage Oral History Project, which is a collaboration between the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. So thank you for talking with us today.
My pleasure.
Before we get into your conservation experience, tell us a little bit about yourself. Start wherever you like.
All right. Well, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
I grew up in Spitzer, Oklahoma, born and raised there, on a little 5-acre plot of ground. And I had the experience that I say a lot of kids are not having today. We grew up with cows and chickens and horses and pigs and all of that good stuff. And we even grew our own corn. And so all of those experiences have brought me to where I am today. It started on that little 5-acre tract, and it grew from there. I can recall being on horseback and not able to climb aboard. Mom or Dad would lift us up, put us in the saddle, and off we'd go, and we'd ride until the horse was tired or we were tired, and then we just slipped off the back and went on back inside. I'm the oldest of 7 children born to Phil Sr. and my mother, Emma Campbell. And we've got a total of 7 siblings, 3 boys and 3 girls. And then we have a younger baby boy at the end there. And I happen to be the oldest. So let's just say that I learned leadership and sacrifice at an early age. That takes us through grade school, and then during our high school years, Mom and Dad separated, and my thoughts that I would go to college quickly changed, and I went to a VOTEC, a trade school, shortly after high school, and it was probably about 9 months after that process was over. I had a desire to leave the family farm there and step out on my own. And that took me to a recruiter's office where we had a conversation about joining the Air Force. And let's just say that was probably one of the best decisions that I made up until that point.
And what year would that have been?
That would have been the tail end December of 1985.
And you would have graduated from
high school in 85. Excuse me, that would have been 85. Graduated in 85
from Spencer,
from Spitzer High School,
okay.
And then went to a VOTEC at Sooner Trade School, where I learned high-tech electronics. And it was May of 86 that I went down, talked to the recruiter, okay, and decided that I wanted to consider joining the Air Force. At that point, I hadn't quite graduated from the VOTEC there, and the following week, I graduated, and I had a phone call interview with a company that was along the drive between downtown and home. I stopped in and did the interview. End of the interview, they offered me the position, and I said, well, I'd love to do that. However, I just joined the Air Force. And they said, wow, that's great. Good on you. And shortly thereafter, I leave for basic training down in Texas. I go to my technical school in Wichita Falls, and I'm driving back and forth, visiting family on the weekends, and I just happened to go by that particular manufacturing company, and they were still up, they were thriving, and it was probably about a year later, during my first 2 years in the military, that I would frequently pass said manufacturing company. And I noted that the doors were closed and the windows were boarded up. It was at that point that I realized God had his hand in everything that I was going to do from that point forward. Now, he had his hand from that prior to up until that point, but that's when I really realized that he has a plan for my life, and this is going to be a great ride. So I realized that that was a great decision, and I moved forward. Fast forward, we're probably in the military for about 3 years, and I'm communicating with my grandfather, who showed me a lot of my farming expertise or farming knowledge growing up as a child. We would sit on my dad's front porch and overlooking cattle grazing in a pasture for my dad's neighbor, and I would let him know, Grandpa, I'm really having a good time in the military, and I'm considering staying. And he goes, well, if that's what you want, that would be great. And I said, well, remember our goal when I first joined, I was just going to do the 4 years, and I was going to separate, and we were going to raise cattle together, and I'd seek off farm employment. He goes, yeah, that sounded pretty good. I said, but I'm really having a good time. He goes, as long as you're enjoying it, then continue on. Mm. It was probably a year later that my grandfather passes with a heart attack. And that conversation that we had on that porch gave me the wisdom and the approval, if you will, that it's okay if you stay off the farm for a little bit of time and continue on with your Air Force career. So we're talking 1989 at this point. I'm a young man serving my country, a little bit of travel overseas, first experiences, enjoying that peace. And at this point, I'm completely debt free. And so I start thinking, I've got a plan for this future. I ultimately want to own my own farm and raise my own farm animals and live the agriculture or farming lifestyle. At that point, I decide, all right, we've got to start doing some investing for our future, and we start getting a few more promotions. And at this point, it's 96. So we moved from 89 to 96. Promotions are coming, and travel and enjoying that lifestyle. And I decide, well, I've got to have somebody to share this life with. So that's when my lovely wife, Deborah, and I met, and we met in church, and we've been there ever since. So we're talking 1996. We were married in 1997, and our son at that point is 10 years old, and he's getting to learn those experiences or ag farm experiences, totally new to him because he was pretty much a city kid, and he's learning and he's taking it all in, taking it in stride. So we fast forward to 1999. That's when our oldest daughter is born, Megan. Okay. and she's just daddy's little girl. Daddy's little girl. Talk about changing my life. And I said, well, I was doing everything for my wife and our son, and now I'm doing things for a little girl now. Just melted my heart. And at that point, I started working a little bit harder at the planning phase and goals and dreams of what I want this young lady to experience. It's now it's now 2000, and we're considering Megan's sibling. And I said, well, if we're going to do this, we kind of need to do it now, because I don't want too much of a distance between. And so we decided that we would like another child, and our youngest daughter comes to us in 2001. And she is, I thought Megan really had my heart, but the both of them together, oh, there's nothing that I wouldn't do or sacrifice for them both. So it's 2001, and we've got another daughter here, and we're enjoying life. We're experiencing new things, and they're traveling back and forth between Louisiana, is where Deb and I met in Shreveport, and between Louisiana and Oklahoma. They're getting to experience all of those good things, visiting family and things of that nature. And now, at this point, I've been in the service for about 16 years, and that's kind of unheard of, to be in one place for such a long period of time. And I have to start considering assignments. So I decided, if we're going to take an assignment, it's going to need to be now while the kids are still young, and it won't be such a culture shock. So we opted to take an assignment in the Philippines, and we traveled to DC for some training, and the tail end of 2002, and then we were assigned in the Philippines in 2003. We spent 4 years there in the Philippines and enjoyed the culture, enjoyed working out of the embassy, and the new experiences for the kids. They were just tremendous. That was a time that we really got to spend a lot of family time sharing with those girls. It was at that point we opted to stay that 4th year, and wife was having such a great time with help in the kitchen, help on the in the household, help with the kids, and so she got to do some things that she hadn't done before, as far as volunteering with a homeless program, and so she really flourished during that piece. It's now at the end of our tour there in the Philippines, and we've got to take an assignment stateside, and we head to Wichita, Kansas.
Too far from home.
Not too far at all. So we signed in Wichita and enjoyed that, close to family, and new experiences for the girls. They're now in 2nd grade, and I want to say kindergarten, if I'm not mistaken. So they experienced that life there in Wichita, fell in love with a church family who really took care of us. And at that point, it's time for me to consider taking a remote tour. The family has to stay back for this next tour, and I would have to go off on my own. A little bit concerned at the beginning. However, that church family there loved on us so much that I felt a little more comfortable with leaving them there, as opposed to to moving them, and I took off for a assignment in Korea, a 12-month assignment. That assignment was great for me. I got to share with some young people from all over the country, and got to see them do great work during that time frame. And we're talking, this is 2010 and 2011. I finish up the tour there in Korea, go back to Wichita, pack up the family, and we move a little bit further north to Nebraska.
Mm.
We're now at Offutt Air Force Base, and enjoying Offutt for the most part. New experiences, a little bit colder weather, and I had enough of the snow and ice, and let's say 2 winters later, I decide we've got to take another assignment, and or we're going to retire. So at this point, we're talking, this is 2011 through 2013 that we're there in Nebraska. Again, I count it in winters. I took, I considered a assignment as well as retirement, and it was at that point I got the phone call that said, "Hey, we're having a hard time filling this position overseas, and we're asking if you would consider it." And I said, "Well, depends on the location, and I have to understand that it's just a 12-month assignment." Yes, it's a 12-month assignment, and it's at Qatar.
Mm.
This is a place that I had deployed to on several occasions. And I said, "Well, the work there is a little bit challenging, but it's not impossible. I think I could handle it." And I said, "Well, I will definitely consider that, but I have to get the approval from the boss." And the young technician on the opposite end of the phone kind of laughed a little bit, and I fully understand. You check in with your boss and let me know in 24 hours what you all decide, and love to be able to match you with this assignment. So I go home, talk it over with the family, and I said, "Dear, this is your choice. We can retire in another year, or I can take this assignment, and we'll see where we end up." And she says, "Well, I'm okay with it." Now, meanwhile, she didn't realize that I had already kind of sweetened the deal or cut the deal that I would get assigned to Oklahoma at the same time. So when I called the young person, the scheduler or detailer, I said, "If you can match me with Oklahoma on the way back, then I'll take the assignment." And she said, "Sure, we can do that." So this is 2014 that we're considering this move. Now, you have to realize that we were on two roads of thought. We were going to retire, or we were going to continue on. And when this assignment came about, initially we were thinking retirement. So we had been looking at farming and farms and acreages and houses and things of that nature. And it just so happened that the farm that we currently have is one of the first ones that we looked at. And after that, my wife decided that we're going to look at a little bit more than just one farm, one house to kind of spend the rest of our lives. And I said, "Dear, that's great. If you want to continue on looking, sounds good. We'll schedule it out, and we'll make that happen." I say that to say during that process, we initially said no. We didn't want this particular. Well, my wife said no, she didn't want this particular house, and I said, okay, well, it meets a lot of our requirements, but it doesn't meet all of them. So she opted to forego until we looked at a few more properties. It's now crunch time when I got this phone call to take this assignment. So things are kind of compressed, let's just say. We had to make a decision on this farm, or we would set my wife and daughters up into an apartment. We decide, well, we're literally going to start the road down to purchasing this farm. Now, at that time, the farm hadn't been, no one had lived in it for probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So the pastures and things were overgrown, and there were a lot of things that we wanted completed. At the time that we looked at this particular home, the second time, the fields had been cared for, the lawns had been cared for, there'd been upgrades to the home interior and exterior, so it was a little more appealing to my wife, let's just say. So we decide we're going to purchase this farm, and we're going through the process of the loan application and all of those pre-requirements, and it's time for me to depart for the overseas assignment. And literally, my wife signed for the farm as I was on an airplane headed to the Middle East. So I can truly say that my wife bought the farm. Yes. We're now packed out. Wife packed out the house, and she moved the girls to Oklahoma, and I'm overseas in Qatar, finishing up a remote assignment. And that was probably the best experience for not only my wife and daughters, but for me as well. Because I look at it like this: if I was home, then they wouldn't have got that hands-on experience that they drastically needed coming from the city and into the country and doing that experience. So probably about halfway through that tour, it's time to buy, some lawn care equipment and things of that nature. And this is when my youngest daughter comes into play. I said, "Dear, I'm ordering up a mower, a riding mower for you. And I need you to make sure that the technician delivers it and that you know how to operate it before he leaves." And she goes, "All right, Dad, I can do that." I said, "Don't let him leave unless you know 100% of how to operate it and how to get the grass mowed." She goes, "I got it." She learned how to mow the grass so well that summer that she took over for probably a couple of summers after that, until she pretty much got into her junior year. She would go out and she'd go, "Dad, I'm mowing the grass." That's how much of an experience that it was for her, and how much she loved being out on the farm. So it's now May of 2015. I'm returning back from the overseas tour, and we're starting to get some things that we wanted. My daughters, as they grew up, we always talked about fruit trees, and we talked about livestock and things of that nature. So we go out to our local nursery and we get trees, and we experience that, as a family, planting our own fruit trees and things of that nature. So that was a blast for them as well. Totally new experience for them. They'd never been out and never done those things. So it's a great family atmosphere. And so we add fruit trees in the early summer, and then we add a few more in the late fall. And we we continue to add trees every spring, fall time frame from the time that we got to the farm. So it's now 2015, and I'm thinking a little bit longer term. I have to get our farm registered and established with USDA, and I'm thinking we may want to run livestock and things of that nature, and I need to know about some of the programs that are out there and what I have to do to qualify. So we file our paperwork with Farm Services, we get our farm number, and we continue on through 2016 when I retire. After
25 years?
After 30 years. 30 years. Okay. Yes. Oh, wow. So we did some leapfrogging in that military career to get to the good stuff, is what I say. That military career taught me a lot of leadership. It taught me a lot about people, about programs and policy, and I'm forever grateful for those experiences. I carried some of those with me today, and they made me a better person. They really have. I retired in July of 2016, and I'd already went down to my local conservation district.
How did you know to do that?
Well, I got a brother that's in wildlife, and he goes, well, if you're wanting to do this thing, you want to do it right, you probably need to go down to the district office and talk to them about what your desires are. So he pointed me in the right direction. Yes. And it was that experience that was so pleasant, so easy, that they made an old GI feel welcome to be a part of it. From the district secretary to the district manager, as well as the NRCS tech, family atmosphere. They came in, they said, yeah, we'll love to be able to help you. Here's some of the programs that we offer, and we'd love to have our NRCS tech come out to your farm, and you guys can walk the fields and explain your desires, and we'll go from there. I'm thinking, wow, I just never thought I was going to get that kind of service. So it was probably a week later, Josh McNeff comes out to our farm, and he's a young guy, and I'm an old GI. He made me feel comfortable, one, and he explained it to where I understood it. And I thought that was fantastic, because I didn't know all of the jargon. I didn't know the processes. All I knew is I wanted to have Angus cattle on this farm, and I wanted to help because I wanted to do it the right way. So we walked the ground. He tells me the cow carrying capabilities of my grasses, what I needed to do to improve the grasses, and what I needed to do to address the resource concerns. It's because of that relationship that Josh and I still keep in contact to this date. He's moved on and working at a different location for USDA, but he always periodically checks in to say, hey, this is what me and the family are doing. Hope you're doing well. And by all means, when I come to visit Oklahoma in the future, then I'll look you up. Yeah. So that's been really special. It was probably 3 to 4 months after that I received a phone call from the district manager, Mr. Don Bartolina. And I'm thinking, okay, what does the district manager want to talk to me about? I thought I did everything right just thus far. And he asked me, he goes, Phil, hey, would you mind coming into the district office? I'd love to talk to you. And I'm thinking, okay, sure. When's a good time? He goes, yeah, you can make it next week. Just pop on in. Love to have you have a conversation and a cup of coffee. So I let the wife know, I got to go into the district office next week. I'm not sure what's going on, but we'll see what happens. I'll let you know. So I go into the district, and Don and I sit down in the conference room. We're having a conversation because, really appreciate you giving us a call and wanting us to come out to your farm. And I know you're signed up for one of the NRCS programs, and you're making some good strides on your farming operation. And I was wondering if you'd consider filling one of our district director positions. We have an open position, and think you'd be a great fit for it. I said, well, Don, what does it entail? He goes, oh, it's pretty easy. You can do it. You can do it easy. It'd be easy for you. It'd be great for you. I said, okay, well, give me some of the duties and descriptions and all of that kind of stuff, and then I'll talk it over with the wife, and we'll see what she says. Oh, okay, no problem. So he hands me some duty description documents, and I leave, go back home, and I have a conversation with my wife at the dinner table, and I said, dear, they really want me to do this, and it doesn't sound like it'd be too much. And she goes, well, if it's something that you want to do, that's fine. I said, well, what if it entails a little bit of travel? She goes, well, I think that'll be okay. The girls are up in age. They can kind of a little more self-sufficient. So I think it'd be just fine. So I called up Don the next day. Don, my wife said, it'd be okay if I did that. He goes, all right, great. Well, come on in. We'll get you kind of indoctrinated, and we'll bring you up to speed. And when I met the rest of the board, they were more than welcoming. They answered all of my questions. Of course, I didn't know a lot, and I had a lot of questions. And it was probably that first 6 months of being a district director that I truly learned what, one, conservation was all about, but what the people of conservation were all about. I learned so much from that board. Now, of course, I traveled to several meetings. I did area meetings here in Oklahoma. And then at that point, I think I did my first South Central meeting. So that was great to realize that, not only people within Oklahoma, but people within, a larger part of, or a smaller part of the U.S. were conservation minded. It was probably 9 months into my conservation career, if you will, that I received a call from the executive director of the Conservation Commission, Mr. Trey Lamb, and his executive assistant, Miss Lisa Owen. They called me up, and they had me on a speakerphone. He goes, hey, Phil, it's Trey and Lisa. How are you? I'm like, hey, Trey, how are you? Hey, Miss Lisa. Yeah, we were wanting to know if we could come out to your farm and visit. So I said, sure. What's going on? Oh, we're hearing a lot of great things from you down at the district, and we're just wanting to come out to your farm, to your operation, and talk with you a little bit. I said, okay, sure, we can set that up for next week if that's okay with you. We set it. They came out to the farm, and we walk around. I give them the tour, and I said, well, so what do you all think? Oh, this is great, Phil. You're really coming along. And I asked, I said, so is this what you wanted to see, wanted to know? No, what we really come out for is to ask you a question. If you would consider being the Area 2 Commissioner. And I'm thinking, okay. No, I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure you'll let me know. Like, yeah, we got this little book here that kind of explains everything, but we'd love to be able to leave the book with you, let you consider it over the weekend, talk it over with the family, and let us know what you think. And let's just say I read through that book, and I got my highlighter out. I had a lot of questions, information highlighted, and jotted down some questions for the next week. And I called up Trey and Lisa. I said, okay, here are my questions. And we started rattling them off. And they answered every one. And I said, well, how much travel would be involved in this? Well, as much as or as little as you would like. I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. And I had the conversation with my wife already, and she goes, well, if you think you do good at it, I fully support it. And at this point, my daughters are like, yeah, Dad, we need to get you off the farm and away from us for a little bit. You need, you need a little time to yourself to do something else. And I said, well, that means you're going to have to care for the livestock if we get it. And they go, well, I think we could do that. I think we could do that. So I'm now sitting on the board as the youngest commissioner. And I'm taking it all in. And at that point, the commissioners are like family. They sat me down. Hey, Phil. No, it feels a little bit intimidating right now, but it'll go fine. It'll go fine. You will do well. And it's at that point that I really kind of get a bigger part of the picture of what conservation really is and the amount of conservation that goes on within the state. And it was probably about 3-4 months of me being on as a commissioner that I attended my first national meeting. And you talk about eye-opening to know that level of detail, of passion, of concern for conservation is going on at that national level. It really, really was what I was looking for post-retirement from the military.
Phil, could
Yes.
you back up just a minute and
Sure.
and share how this is a governor's appointment and you had to go through Senate confirmation? Was there anything about that process of interest?
Absolutely. I'm glad you kind of brought that to the forefront. Let's just say I'd never been in a environment to where I had to deal with legislators.
Me.
And so I talk with Trey, and he walks me through. He goes, Phil, your senator is Senator Sharp, and he will be the one that will carry your name forward to the Ag Committee, because we've got to get him to nominate you and the governor to appoint you. And at this time, it was Governor Fallon. And Trey and I go down to the Capitol. We go to Senator Sharp's office. He was expecting us. We'd already made an appointment and things of that nature. And he brings me in. He goes, Phil, come on in. And I'm thinking, how does this senator know me that well that he calls me Phil? So I suppose he did his research. And he goes, first of all, I want to say thank you for your service. And thank you for your willingness to continue serving the state of Oklahoma. And I said, well, sir, it's my pleasure. He goes, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to the ag committee. I'm going to do all of the talking, and they may or may not ask you to say a few words at the end. I said, okay, great. This is all new to me. So we go to that committee. He does his introduction, and he carries forward my name as a nominee. And the committee gives the thumbs up, and they say, great, thank you for your service and your willingness to serve in this capacity. And did you have any words that you'd like to share? Of course, I had to thank them for their approval thus far, and it was totally new experience, never experienced anything like that. Shortly after, I get the final approval from the governor, and you talk about feeling, I really can't explain it. You know, somebody from that level would actually say, you're who I want to fill this position.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what I said earlier on. God's purpose, God's plan for my life. Way back then, I couldn't see it. But as I looked back then to see all of those experiences, those courses, that leadership experience, it all brought me to that point. You're the person that we want to fill this position for this period of time. And it's really, really taken off from there. It really has. So I'm at the state level. I'm one of the 5 commissioners for the state, and there are always leadership opportunities. And the Oklahoma Association of Conservation Districts put on a leadership program educating leaders across the state from the district level to prepare them for continued service at the state level or at the national level. That was a eye-opening experience for me. Lots of great folks in that class, and several of them we're still good friends today. And anytime that we get together at our area meetings or our state meeting, or if we see each other on the national stage, we always reconnect, we always catch up, and it's one of those where we inspire each other to reach that next goal. And that was a introduction to the state level leadership program, and that prepared me to serve at the next level. I'm probably skipping a little bit, but let's get to this point here. The National Association of Conservation Districts, as a part of the National Conservation Foundation, were putting on a leadership program at the national level, and they were soliciting applicants from across the country to apply for positions under their leadership course. And I was one of 7 to be selected for this program.
Across the country.
Across the country. And it's a part of the Next Generation Leadership Institute, which is a part of the National Conservation Foundation. And it has really forged a bond with the 7 members of this cohort, and we're making that impact at that national level. And it's all about bringing folks from the grassroots, from the local led, bodies of government at the district level all the way to the national level to influence what goes on at a national level. And I will be forever grateful for, one, the opportunity and the experience that this has provided.
And you're not done yet.
No, they say that I still got some legs, and they're looking for some young and energetic folks to carry the mantle, and I just happen to be one that's willing to serve, and that's what it all boils down to. It's all about serving my Lord and Savior, and serving my fellow man.
And all of these positions and roles are voluntary. You're not paid.
Are you sure? I thought I got a paycheck.
We get paid in other ways, but yes, just not monetary.
They really are. I count it a blessing to be able to serve in this capacity, and it goes beyond. It's about a passion, and my passion transitioned from defending our country and its way of life to feeding and conserving our natural resources now. Yeah.
Seems like a natural flow, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Everybody should try it. Everybody should try it. Now, during this process, there are several programs that I happen to be a part of. One of them in particular, which I have a real passion for, is the Conservation and Agriculture Reach Everyone program. It's a program funded through USDA and through NRCS and USDA, and its target is to encourage those minority producers, the underserved and such, to be a part of agriculture, and affording them the opportunity to participate in programs, to seek and be a part of the outreach and education, and ultimately develop them into being those continued producers. And I just happen to be one of the CARE champions for Oklahoma County, and I've been a CARE champion. I think that I was one of the original for this state, but there's never a day that goes by that I don't touch somebody with mentorship, with education about conservation, about ag, and the resources that are available if they just seek at their local level, at that district office. I forgot we target veterans as a part of the CARE program as well. Yes.
Minorities, are there that many in the state that are interested in?
Well, I'm finding that there are, but there's a trust piece that we're continuously working on, and that's one of my goals, is to break down some of those barriers with access, and to encourage folks to seek and at least try again. And I kind of put myself out there. I'll let anybody and everybody have my contact information, and if they've got an issue or what they perceive as an issue, then I encourage them to give me a call. And a lot of times it's in the communication, and that's where I think that we fall a little bit short. It's in the communication. How do we get to yes? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, and if we worked on this is what we can do as opposed to what we can't do, I think we could probably get a little bit further down the road. So, yeah, that's why I take it as a passion to educate, to participate. It doesn't matter in the state of Oklahoma. If they say they want me to be there, I'll figure out how to get there, and I'll figure out how it is that we can assist that producer or potential producer with addressing their concern. Yeah.
So you have to be knowledgeable about all the programs that are out there, at least
Well,
somewhat.
I should be knowledgeable, but I'm a good question asker or seeker. And I like to think that I've got a way of asking a question that is not offensive to anyone that would be providing the answer, and that the information would get across correctly. Some of the questions that I ask are, how should I or how could I, as opposed to this is what I want. And it boils down to the communication. Sometimes it's the delivery as well as the sender and receiver. So I kind of work that a little bit.
Yeah,
Just
if you don't know, you say, I can find out.
Exactly. That's it. Nobody has to be an expert. It boils down to, are you willing to seek the information, or are you willing to research the information to answer the question? Yeah. And I'm finding more and more that a lot of the information is being communicated, but it's not necessarily received properly. Yeah. And I'll be a part of doing the education to help individuals understand this is what you're thinking. However, this is what we're supposed to be doing, and goes beyond just what we're supposed to be doing. Here it is in the policy that says this is how we do what we do. It boils down to, it's not what the individual says, it's what is the policy? What does the policy say? Or what does the guideline say? Yeah.
Well, and you can speak from experience too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about what's in black and white and what's in the document. And if it says that we can, then great. But if it says that we can't, then we can't until something changes. Yes.
I can't imagine that there's that many people out buying 40 acres that's willing to.
No, there's not a lot of people that are looking to buy anything on that scale. And then the other piece is the access to. Right now, the prices of real estate and ag ground are climbing up, and so that creates a barrier. However, there's a lot of urban and community conservation that's going on, and a lot of smaller operations on lots and smaller acreage, and that's also a part of what the conservation districts are doing today as well. They're targeting urban producers and assisting them with programs such as the seasonal high tunnels and things of that nature that allow them to grow fruits and vegetables on a smaller scale. And that's kind of fitting a lot of individuals these days. And I just happened to be in a conversation with the NRCS chief, Chief Crosby, and he communicated that there are going to be efforts that will target urban conservation and those smaller urban producers. So looking forward to the future of urban conservation and all that it's going to do to help out those smaller producers. Yeah.
Well, and I guess it's not just producers that you're dealing with either. I mean, it's water pollution. And
absolutely. That's another piece that I'm a little bit passionate about. You might say that I'm passionate about a lot of different things, huh? But it just so happens that there are 2 flood control structures in Oklahoma County, both of which are less than 3 miles away from our farm. So when I say again that God has a purpose, has a plan, what are the chances? It's not by coincidence. It's by divine intervention that I just happen to be less than 3 miles from those flood control structures. So I can talk personally of what they're doing, because our farm, we can't go in any direction without crossing over a creek of some capacity. So with that being said, I'm always concerned about flooding and our amount of sediment that enters the water streams, the amount of fertilizer that my fellow producers are applying to their cropland, and the amount of livestock that would kind of get too close to those creeks, if you will. So yeah.
Well, how many Angus can your property hold then?
Well, our property can hold easily. I think we calculated 15. However, I've got to put up some additional cross fencing to ensure that we have sufficient grass throughout the entire year. And with the markets fluctuating and things of that nature, so it's created a little bit of a challenge. So, yeah.
And so the NRCS would help you determine what kind of grass to plant?
Absolutely.
To improve.
What kind of grass and when to plant, and the amount of fertilizer, and of course the soil testing is extremely important with what we do, and it's all about creating a sustainable operation. It's one thing to have a hobby, but sometimes hobbies can get a little bit expensive. So, yeah.
Well, when your wife first signed her name on that to buy the land, did you have any idea how all these different things came into play?
No, that was far fetched.
You just wanted
cattle. I just wanted to have some cattle, and that I could go out and I could watch graze and raise for myself my own beef and things of that nature. I had no idea that it entailed managing grass.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me consider, well, maybe I need to go back to college and learn range management and things of that nature. However, several of the programs that I've attended have provided that opportunity to gain that knowledge about rangeland, about cattle management and things of that nature. And it's a process you're continuously learning. And as I learn new information, then I share that with the folks that I come in contact with, the folks that I mentor. And in fact, I have a really dear friend that we were stationed in Wichita together. He just happened to be my sponsor when I returned from the Philippines. And we served together there in Wichita, and now we're both here in Oklahoma. And he's being mentored by me once again in ag and conservation. So, yeah, he's really a sharp individual. Yeah.
So, Phil, you touched on water a little bit. Both as commissioner and as a district director, you get to oversee or participate in the Blue Thumb program and learning about water quality and water quality education. And I believe you've had some personal experience in that realm as well.
Absolutely. It was probably within that first 6 months, that first 9 months. I just happened to be dropping my daughter off at school, and I'm headed back to the farm. And of course, at this time, I'm noticing what little logos and whatnot are on the sides of vehicles. And I know when I see that Conservation Commission logo there, I typically wonder what those folks are doing. So I'm returning in the morning after dropping my daughter off at school. I see the truck off to the side of the road there in the Arcadia area. And I said, I wonder what those folks are doing. So I stopped, pull in behind the truck there, and lo and behold, it's some of the water quality folks out going to do their stream monitoring. And I said, wow. I said, I've never done this before. You mind if I tag along? They said, sure. I tell you what, come on down. I said, well, I'm not dressed for it. All I have is my tennis shoes. Oh, that's perfect. Come on in. The water's fine. So, again, less than 6 months or less than 9 months after being, fresh, newly, no idea about conservation, I'm now in the streams assisting with the water quality monitoring, stream monitoring. And you talk about an experience. That was fantastic because I learned so much about the streams and the creeks that are so close to me that it gives you a different appreciation for what's going on at that local level right next door. And fast forward, I'm always looking, and they know anytime we got something kind of unique, Phil's always interested. And it was probably this past March, April, I think it was springtime, that they put on a education program, and I said, sure, sign me up. And so we got into one of the creeks again and did, all of those samplings and things of that nature. So there's nothing that these folks won't take you out, won't educate you on, and help you to gain a deeper appreciation for what goes on within the water quality division. Yeah.
I can imagine what kind of conversation you would have on the porch with your grandfather today.
Oh my goodness, he would never believe how far this little kid has gone over the years. And I will tell you, some days I have to pinch myself to think a little kid from Spencer, Oklahoma, who would go on and do things in the military, who's now breaking ground and becoming a part of and influencing things that are going on throughout the country. I would never have imagined.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to ask Phil, in your 4+ years as a commissioner, what are some of the issues that you all at the State Conservation Commission have dealt with, the programs that have been initiated, or the challenges you're facing in state government?
Well, I will tell you, there's always a challenge with the funding piece. And it's unfortunate, but it's just reality. With the shrinking budgets that we have, dollars are precious, and we as conservation-minded individuals have to be willing to tell our story. And we have to educate our legislators to the point to where they understand that there's an impact, and then there's a cost benefit of applying dollars to conservation. There are a lot of great things that are going on that individuals just don't know about, or they don't appreciate because they're just not educated. And that's the challenge. It's a willingness to tell our story to anybody and everybody who will listen, and then the education piece. If we're not telling our story, then somebody else is telling our story for us, and it may not have the right level of truth to it. Yeah. And of course, there's going to be a challenge with personnel as our current conservation workforce kind of gets a little more seasoned, so to speak. Then there's going to be opportunities for younger people to come on board. And there will be a lot of corporate knowledge that will be lost as individuals transition from conservation to the retired life. But we've got some great folks that are willing to spin them up quickly. However, we do need those folks to come on board at an early age. Yeah.
keep carrying.
That's it. That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, in Oklahoma County, what are some of the issues that's unique? Well, maybe not unique, but
Well, for Oklahoma County, it's the urban piece.
urban piece.
We've got to do better with educating individuals on urban conservation and urban ag, and that has and it continues to be a challenge. A lot of the programs for NRCS and for the state are geared toward the larger producers or the bigger operations. Not a lot of programs are targeting the urban piece. But since I've been on board as a commissioner and as a district director, we're starting to address those things, but there's always room for further improvement. Yes.
So you have to put in 32 years, 30 some years on this one then.
There you go. Absolutely. I tell everybody I'll stick around as long as they'll allow me. As long as they'll allow me. Yes. Yes.
So you're active in OECD and NACD, and I'm learning all these acronyms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like alphabet soup is what I said. And they got Campbell right there in the middle of it.
That's true. And EQIP was one of your first.
Yes. Our first program that we applied for and were funded through was our water under the EQIP program, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and we initially got a pond put in for the livestock water for our cattle, and we were slated to have 2 ponds. And I got to thinking, I said, if a drought comes, and probably a good chance that it will, and the pond goes dry, if I have 2 ponds, then I have 2 dry ponds. And I talked to our technician for NRCS. I said, what are the chances of me getting a well as opposed to the second pond? He goes, well, we'd have to kind of redo your contract. And I said, if there's any way that we could do that, that would be ideal. And I said, I'm willing to go and talk to whoever, with the reasoning that I'm pleading my case is, again, 2 ponds, drought, I got no water. But if I had a well and pond, at least I had water, and maybe I could run the well to fill the second pond. And it worked out. The contract was amended, and now we've got 1 pond and 1 pasture with a tank, and we've got the other pasture with a pond in it. Yeah.
Do you know what prompted you to even think that way, to switch from a
Well, it just so happened that I was in a conversation with somebody at one of our meetings, and they were talking about the drought and the wildfires, and was it 2010, 2011? Mm-hmm. And I got to thinking, if that came again and we didn't have water, then I would kind of be in that situation to where I didn't have access. And so that, as a result of that conversation, at said meeting, which was a conservation meeting, I sought to change and amend our contract.
So networking's important too.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about networking, mentorship, and having a conversation.
So within the conservation world, who is your mentor? Do you have one?
Well, officially, it's Mr. Rick Jean up in K County. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll have to back up. When I talked about that first area meeting, I was asked if I would judge the speech contest. And I'm thinking, okay, sure, I have no idea about conservation speeches, but I do know about meeting a board, because I've met a board in the military for promotions, for awards and things of that nature. So I know that part. I participate, and one of the fellow judges just happened to be Miss Deanne, who's Rick's wife. And we spark a conversation after the speech contest was done. We've got kids that are getting ready to go to college, and we have a conversation about college, about savings and things of that nature. And lo and behold, she becomes a real good friend. She introduces me to Rick. Rick's like, hey, we're just right up the road. Anytime you want to come up and visit, anytime, you're more than welcome. Fast forward, I'm now in the leadership course at the national level, and we're talking about mentors. And I'm thinking, it's got to be Rick Jean if he's willing to do it. And lo and behold, I reach out to Rick, and he goes, Phil, I'd be honored. And so that's my mentor with conservation. And Rick and I will communicate. He'll tell me his opinion on what's going on at the national, state, or local level. And as a result of me being the area 2 commissioner, his area or his district falls underneath my purview. So we have conversations about conservation at his local level, at the district level, as well as what's going on in area 2 as well. Yes. Yeah.
I think I looked up area 2's kind of like the I-35 corridor.
Yes, it's parallel to I-35 running north and south.
I mean, all the way to Kansas.
Absolutely.
All the way to Texas. So
Yes.
I think that's the Monarch Byway too, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and it's an education piece. I totally get what we're doing there. It's really eye opening, but I do think our signage could be a little bit bigger. That's just me personally.
Well, pollinators in general.
That's it.
Monarch's the poster
Right.
bug.
Yeah.
So what's been a highlight?
Oh wow, there've been so many. I would have to say that thus far, my highlight is being asked by the National Association of Conservation Districts president, Mr. Michael Crowder, to serve on a committee that initially started out as a task force regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. He personally called me up and said, Phil, I think you're the right person to serve on this committee. You've got some insight, you've got some experience that would ultimately benefit our efforts, and if you would really do this, I think it will work out for the better of the association. And so I serve on that committee. Well, excuse me, I serve on that task force, which is now changed into a committee, and we're looking at tackling those issues regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion at the national level. So, yeah.
You got some ideas there?
It's new to NHCD, and it's going to take time in order to implement the changes, and the vision at the national level is just that. It's going to have to change at the local level in order to make the impact that the National Association is looking for. And I highly encourage those boards to consider looking at who they're bringing on board as district directors. There's all kinds of ways that we could look at this diversity piece, be it, race, color, creed, gender, experience, veteran, non-veteran. There's all kinds of ways that we can increase that diversity on those boards, And I highly ask that those boards would consider that, as well as bringing those board members on as associates, so that they learn the piece of what it takes to be a district director, and they can still provide the input. They may not be voting members, however, that influence can be felt at that local level if we bring those folks on board. You'll always get what you get if you seek the same thing every time.
Yeah.
You'll never get change unless you seek change.
Words of wisdom here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
More voices around the table is always a good thing, I suppose.
Yes, that is true. Because we all have blind spots, and that's just reality. From our own experiences, I have them myself. But when we all get together and we all have a conversation, a lot of those blind spots are eliminated because we shed a little bit of light.
Did some of your experiences in the military play into you developing that approach? I mean, did you?
Oh, absolutely. In the military, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. We put you together as individuals, and you will form a team. Mm-hmm. And as you move up in ranks, you are afforded that opportunity to build teams. And as you lead projects, smaller projects become bigger projects, which become larger projects. And I count it a blessing that I was afforded that opportunity. One, I had mentors that would mentor me on the smaller projects, as well as those until I became the individual that I would be mentoring someone on this project, allowing them to make the decisions and to garner some success without the penalty of failing, because I'd be there to provide a little bit of input, or if it did fail, be willing to step forward to say, I take full responsibility for that. It's my reason that the operation or the task failed. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you learn from those.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about. Yes.
Are either one of your daughters into conservation?
My daughters are far, far from conservation at this point. And in fact, the oldest is off to Oklahoma State and Tulsa, and she's going through a medical program, and she's applying for medical school. And then the youngest is at Wichita State, and she's working on her bachelor's, and she says that she wants to be a lawyer. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, she could still argue for landowners and such.
That's it. I'm going to let her get there, and then I'll kind of provide a little bit of input. Hey, dear, you could probably do this for ag, and I think we'd be okay.
And the medical one's taking care of people.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely.
There's probably going to be a veteran or a farmer that she's going to be caring for. I'm sure of that.
Or she could switch to veterinarian, then you got it.
There you go. Yeah.
So what kind of fruit trees do you have on your place?
Well, we've got about 45 fruit trees. And we've got apples, probably about 3 or 4 varieties of apples. Pears, plums, peaches, about 5 or 6 varieties. Apricots, persimmons, and a few cherry trees that we've just recently added. And so we're anticipating the harvest in the future, but for right now, they're less than 2-3 years, so we're just growing them up right now.
So even the ones you first planted probably aren't bearing a whole lot of fruit.
No, they're not, and we were impacted with a couple of late frost events the last couple of years, and so we just missed out. We come pretty close, and we were super excited, but Not quite there just yet.
Do you have to irrigate?
We've got everything kind of close to where it's irrigated through our house well system. So that's one of the concerns. So we brought everything a little bit close to the house, as well as the wildlife. So yeah, that first year, let's just say the deer jumped the fence, and they got their share of the new growth. I'll just say that. Yes.
Well, then you have to build a higher fence, or no?
Well, what we did was we employed some livestock dogs, and they pushed the deer back, so we don't have to worry about the deer jumping the fence anymore. Yeah, yeah.
What kind of livestock dogs?
Well, I call them livestock dogs. They're working dogs. They're German shepherds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't like anything coming too close to the fence. So just as soon as they sense that the deer are getting a little bit too close, they go to barking, and they just push them back a little bit. Yeah.
So, and I guess Oklahoma County doesn't have to worry about feral hogs right now.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. We do have we do have feral hogs that are currently impacting within Oklahoma County. My daughter and I are leaving one morning, going to school, and we've got a 70-acre tract that is between our farm and the creek. And my daughter's fully aware, because anything ag, I'm always talking about at the dinner table. And we just happened to be talking about feral hogs at one point early on. And so I showed her images of what feral hogs look like and all of that. So I say that to say this. We're driving out of the drive onto the road toward the creek, and in that 70-acre field, my daughter spots a feral hog running toward the creek. She goes, "Dad, look at that. There's a feral hog running across the pasture into the creek." And I'm like, "No way, there's not." And I look, and I just caught just the glimpse of it. And I said, "Dear, you're absolutely correct." So they're here in Oklahoma County, and I'm not the only one that spotted them. In fact, this year, I spotted in that same field probably about 20. So it went from a single couple of years ago to about 20 in a matter of, let's say, 3-4 years. That's how fast and how close they are to the county. Yes. Yes.
So being on the board of directors, then you'll have to come up with some.
Oh yes, we've got a feral hog pilot program that's it's really off the grounds now, and it's targeted in certain counties, and they're working together to do some trapping and some eradication. Now, we have to realize that if we trap a couple of hundred, that's just a couple of hundred and probably thousands. So if we're not trapping feral hogs faster than they're able to reproduce, then we're kind of spinning our wheels. So it's going to take everybody, every entity. It's a team effort. We're going to have to get some additional state funding, and we're going to have to encourage producers to want to be a part of these feral hog projects.
Thinking if your apple trees start to producing on the ground,
That's it.
Dinner.
I mean, a lot of producers and landowners, they love deer feeders, and love to see the deer when they come up and graze the corn and things of that nature. Along with that comes the feral hogs if they've got a food source. So yeah.
That makes sense too.
That's a part of it. I mean, it's reality.
Yeah, some of those things you don't realize until someone says it, and it does make sense.
Right.
When you hear it.
That's it. What we do ultimately impacts our neighbor.
Yeah.
Be it upstream or downstream or across that fence, across that, road, what we do ultimately affects our neighbor. From the insecticides, pesticides that we apply to our crops, the wind drift can blow those into our neighbor's area, or it can impact our beekeepers. Just a matter of that quick. So ultimately what we do impacts our neighbors. So be good stewards, be good neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's all an ecosystem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're all tied together.
Well, as you travel to national conferences and things, does your wife take along with you?
She hasn't traveled as much as I'd like, but she has gone to a few. Yes. Right now she's enjoying her work as a radiation therapist, and she loves seeing cancer patients through their process, and providing that level of comfort and assurance that they will be okay. So, yes.
Your family's hitting all the points.
Oh yeah, we're trying to make that impact.
Making a difference in a lot of lives,
Yeah.
so on multiple stages.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to ask, Ben? I mean, I
covered
think
the
he's covered
waterfront
everything
there.
that I had without even asking questions. Were you an FFA in high school?
No, ma'am. We
Okay.
didn't have FFA per se in high school. They did have a horticulture entity, but I didn't take any of those classes. So
Or
no,
none of
ma'am. No.
Well, on the 5 acres that your grandparents had they done anything conservation-wise that you were aware
Well,
of at that
they
point?
did a lot of things that I didn't know was conservation.
Yeah.
And as a young kid, I always asked my grandfather, "Grandpa, why are we doing it this way? Why are we walking the cows to this field that's, a mile away from the house?" And he goes, "Well, son, that's kind of what we got to do right now." I had no idea that we were rotational grazing at that point. All I knew was Grandpa said, "Go out and open the gate so the cows can walk to the next pasture," and thinking that's just the way that we did it. And then when it came to displacing nutrients, I had no idea that that's what Dad was doing. Dad said, "Go out there and rake the pasture." I'm thinking, why are we working a pasture? I don't want to do that. And of course, we're out there dispersing the nutrients across the pasture as opposed to leaving them concentrated in this one particular area.
And by that you mean manure?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
there you go.
For
I
those
try
who
to
might not know.
keep it clean.
No, but common language, someone might not
Right.
understand that.
That's true. That's true. It's all about the communication.
And do you have
Yes.
chickens?
Yes, we've got 100 Rhode Island Red layers.
Oh, wow.
And that started out as a project for my daughter in high school. She goes, "Dad, remember you told me that we would always have chickens and I would be able to sell eggs." I'm thinking, okay, dear, we're going to take you through the entire process. So we ordered up 100 Rhode Island Red pullets, and she raised them from day old through the process of full-fledged layers, and she sold farm fresh eggs as a little side experience, if you will, side business for herself in high school. And that ended when she went off to college. Well, actually a little bit before that, when she got to her, I think it was about her junior year, she goes, "Dad, I'm not doing the eggs anymore." And I said, "What do you mean? They're your chickens." She goes, "I'm not doing that." However, when her friends came over, then she became the chicken expert. So, yeah.
Well, what did you do with them once you stopped having them? Do you still, or did you?
Yes, well, we got a little bit of a client base, and they were looking for them on a consistent basis. So let's just say that that initial batch were processed into chicken nuggets or chicken stew or fried chicken, not sure.
Yeah.
But we ended up going through and getting a second set as well. So yeah.
Or were you learning how to do that along with her, or did you already have
No,
experience with chickens?
we had that experience firsthand when we were growing up on our 5-acre farm. We had chickens, and we raised our own poultry, processed our own poultry, and let's just say that's where I got appreciation for the farm workers that do that for a living. And so, yeah. Unique experience. Everybody needs to do it at least once.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Chicken comes from more than the freezer section.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Okay, anything else on the, do you stock your pond? Probably not. If it's
No,
water for the cattle.
we were primarily water for the cattle. I was talked into getting some bait fish, if you will, brim, and we stocked probably about 100 or so in the pond there. And I'm not one for feeding fish. I'll say if they survive, they survive. If not, they don't. The pond is really there for the cattle as a water source. That just didn't register, and so just so happened I took the grandkids out to the pond, and I wasn't 100% sure there was anything in there, but I wanted them to experience that first fishing event with their pawpaw. And so we took them out. Well, I took them out there one afternoon, and they all got to fish per se. So didn't catch anything, but they all got to fish.
Not even a turtle, huh?
No, not even a turtle.
Well, with your brother being in wildlife, he comes along too. And
Absolutely. If they really want to catch fish, we'll just take them to Uncle Tim's house, and he'll put them in the pond on fish. Yeah.
Okay, well, you've had a busy introduction to conservation in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see yourself?
5 to 10 years from now, I'm sure at some point I'll want to do something different, but I want to stay in tune and plugged in on my local board. Currently, I'm the chair of that board, and I'm sure that I'll rotate on and off as the chair over the next couple of years. And then at the state association, I haven't participated on the state association. However, I'm on the state board as a commissioner, and at some point I'll rotate off with being a commissioner, and then I'll seek an opportunity to join the association to stay at that level and plugged in there. And then at the national level, I anticipate at a minimum serving as a committee member, a committee chair to one of their committees at the national level. Not 100%, but I'm not writing off becoming a member of the board or things of that nature. We'll just let that national piece kind of play itself out. I'm one that I don't turn down opportunities, but if opportunities are I look at it like this: if it presents itself, it's not by chance. It's not by chance that it presents itself. And so, as opportunities come, then I will push my way through. And so,
After checking with the boss.
absolutely, that's like understood, unwritten rule. Got to check in.
Well, then I could see you becoming maybe president of the NACD, but you have to become president of OECD first, or no? No,
No,
not necessarily.
once you get kind of plugged in at NACD, it can happen. I'll just say it can happen.
Well,
Yes.
how many terms can you serve on the commission? Is there a limit?
It's a 5-year term. It's the governor's appointment. So we had some that have served like 4 terms while I was working.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That'll get you through 20 years, right?
Potentially.
Well, I will always have influence, and I tell everyone that I run into. It doesn't matter what position that I sit at when it comes to conservation. Conservation is in me now, and it doesn't matter. I don't have to be on a board in order to impact conservation. I've kind of gained the confidence that if I have something to say, you may or may not agree with it, but at least you'll listen to it.
Okay.
And so from the national to the state or the local level, and that goes all the way from our district boards to our local town meetings to the state capitol, as well as the national. Everybody works for somebody, and all of those folks work for me, the citizen. So if if we all have that attitude that we all work for somebody and everybody works for the citizen, then I think we'll be a little bit further along, and we'll gain a different appreciation for what goes on.
We need to clone some Phil Campbell. So.
Well, every now and again I get one right.
I would think your military experience probably helps build that confidence. I mean.
Oh, absolutely. As you move up the ranks and you gain additional experience and additional influence, then you realize that your voice carries a little bit of weight, and when you say things and they prevent things from happening, or you provide that insight that makes that difference, and it does go that way, then that level of confidence is boosted. And as long as you keep that confidence in check, then I think you'll be just fine. Yeah.
I think Oklahoma's lucky that you didn't like the cold weather in Nebraska.
Well, I think I'm probably more blessed than the state is with that regard, because me and cold, we get along, but we get along for a short period of time. Yeah.
Well, if you don't have anything else, I'll ask my last question.
Yeah. All right, sure.
How do you want to be remembered when history is written? How do you want it?
I'd like to be remembered as a member that had a passion for his Lord and Savior. That he had a passion for his family and his fellow man. Is where it all boils down to me. If you've gone through some of the things that I've gone through, and you're still here to tell about them, to share with somebody, then to me, that's what we're all here to do. We're here to share this experience, to share this journey that we're on, because that's what it all boils down to. Share the journey, enjoy the journey with your fellow man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've enjoyed you sharing it with us this morning.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you.
So, Phil, if you would share with us the challenge of being a commissioner and a conservation district director during these last 18 months of the pandemic, and how it's impacted operations, personnel, and working with producers.
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. The COVID really took a negative impact on what we do as conservation districts, as a commission, as well as at what we do at that national level. right off the bat, it produced a lot of uncertainty. And with a lot of uncertainty comes a little bit of fear. And you add that all together in an environment that is a little bit of a challenge already. And that's just another layer of fog that was created. At the district level, we weren't meeting. And when we would meet, it would be via Zoom, and that presented a technological challenge. A lot of our district staff, as well as district directors, aren't technically savvy. And I, for one, am one of them. I didn't know all of the ins and outs of Zoom, didn't know all of the ins and out of the what do you call it? The phone in teleconferencing. That's it. That was a challenge, and luckily, members of the district staff were able to work their way through that, and we got through it. And then at the commission, if you recall, I was the commissioner during the vast majority of this COVID piece, and that was a tremendous challenge with getting access to come in to the ag building here in Oklahoma City, as well as the technology with getting all of the other commissioners plugged in and dialed in. It affected how we do our meetings. A lot of the meetings were, well, all of the meetings were canceled, and a lot of the things that we would normally discuss were kind of put on hold. All of that networking that's done at the area meetings, at the annual meetings, all of the experiences that were shared, the positive with what's going on with conservation, were kind of put on pause, and we weren't able to meet. And we did some innovative things with putting together videos and things of that nature. They're great. They're a good interim, but nothing beats producers, district directors, and conservation leaders getting together and sharing those experiences. There's nothing like that in-person feel. Along with that, of course, tensions are high when it comes to conservation, and whether or not we're vaccinated, we're unvaccinated, we're in person, or we're teleconferencing, telework, and things of that nature. It has really increased the level of stress with our producers, our district staff, and all leaders at all facets. We're just wanting to get back to normal. And in my eyes, I don't know that we'll ever get back to the normal, most recent. However, we can get back to something that's very similar to that. It's going to take some work to get there. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you.